everybody, Kevin here for WranglerForum.com. Got another install coming your way in just a few minutes. We're going to be replacing our stock fender flares with something else. What exactly, you ask? These Bushwacker flares. So let's get started. As we begin the installation, Bushwacker does provide a very detailed installation guide. Recommend you read through it. It's going to tell you the things and tools you're going to need to perform this properly, and of course safely, so you don't ruin or damage anything on the Jeep. In general terms, we're going to remove the old fender, we're going to put the new one on. It's not terribly difficult, it's just kind of time consuming because there are a lot of steps to it, as highlighted in the instruction manual. One of those first steps is to get yourself a 10mm socket and start unbolting everything. So I'm going to get started on that. So underneath the flare there are multiple bolts to undo. You've got this one in the front, the one attached to the support bracket, as well as the one behind it. And then over here we have some additional ones as well. Just take your time taking these out. All the bolts have been undone underneath the flare. Now we just have to go ahead and pull it away. We've also disconnected the marker bulb assembly as well. And we just have to kind of pull and make some noises like that, which I'm told is perfectly normal. The flare is now off. And now we need to go ahead and turn it over and remove several of these plastic fasteners. You can use a trim tool piece with this, it helps a lot. But you can also go ahead and use a flat blade screwdriver. Just kind of get in here and work until they come out. Next up is to go ahead and drill out these 6 rivet style points on the flare, which will then separate the two pieces. So go ahead and do that now. At this point I've got the inner liner remounted to the Jeep using the factory hardware and the supplied washers in the kit. Again, you're going to separate this large, heavier duty section from the inner fender, and you can just kind of toss that to the side. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to line it up. It uses 2 of those factory attachment points right here to hold it in place. And you're marking for the area you're going to cut off of this particular liner. You can use a grease pencil to kind of follow along the outline of the body and the flare and match it up, and then do the same in the front as well, and then just a matter of cutting it with a cut-off tool, grinding disc, whatever you have laying around that will go ahead and cut it for you. Next up, we're going to go ahead and put these trim pieces on, and we're going to attach them to the body. But before we do that, you want to go ahead and clean up some of the holes. There's a little bit of extra plastic from the mold. When they did that, it'll make the installation go a little quicker. Fit up a little bit snugger when you do that. You can just clean them out pretty easily. Also on these other locations that aren't the body mount holes, here and here and here, you're going to put these clips on, and then you want to go ahead and put the threaded portion towards the back side. From what the instructions say, and you have to force them on there a little bit to get them in. But again, go ahead and clean those up and they'll go on much easier for you. Then we'll be mounting these. There's 3 of them, 1, 2, and 3, and they are marked on the back side. This one has let's see, P1, this is P2, and then this one is P7. Again, passenger side, so you know what's going where. Go ahead and get these trimmed up and get them on. Next up, we're going to go ahead and use the supplied hardware and the washers and locking nuts to go ahead and hold these trim pieces in. There's multiple holes in each piece. You're going to tighten them just a little bit, just put in a little bit, because you'll do a final tighten once you get them all down and in. At this point we have the liner behind and set in. We want to make sure that this hole lines up with the factory body mount, fender mount here. And from the factory this was on the outside. We're now placing it behind it, and we're going to use one of these to push it through and in, and then lock it in place. You'll then want to reinstall the larger rear bolt as well, and it's going to rest. Not sure how well this will stand out, but there's a post it sits on that screws up on into under here. Next we'll go ahead and cut the leads for the light so that we can go ahead and install the included light into the fender. We'll need to cut this back a little bit, trim some wires, and then we'll hook it up. So this is the connector or splicer you're going to use between the 2 wires. One side is a heat type of connector that will shrink over the wire. The other side is a plug-in side which goes to the new wiring harness. You can use a heat gun with this. We don't have one, so I'm just going to go ahead and use a lighter. I'll put the wire in here like this, push it in there, and we're just going to go ahead and see, hopefully this works. kind of turn it as you go. On a non-windy day, this will work much better. So one thing I do want to point out is that for whatever reason the wires are reversed on the lights that come with it. So I actually need to put black to white and the white to black if you want your light to work. So definitely make sure, at least on ours we had to. And so there you go. Just kind of keep that tip in mind. If your light's not working, be sure to switch the wires around a little bit. So in order to get the lights on, there's a couple screws that go over here. What I did is I went ahead and had to put a few extensions together along with 11/32 on the end, and then through the other side the flare brought in, and then use a screwdriver to tighten everything down. Not too bad if you have the right tools to do it. And then on the ends it's got these little tiny plastic caps that go on that fit. Let's see here. Over the screws, I'm assuming they just pop in like that. And get the other one out of the bag. And that one pops in like that as well. So it really completes the look of the marker light. Just got done doing a mock-up on the fender, setting it on the railing here. And it looks like we still got a little bit too much material on the fender skirt, so we're going to remove just a little bit more, test fit again, and keep doing that until we find the process or the length where it all goes together and fits good. One additional step that we haven't done up to this point, even though the directions say to do it early on, is attach some of this seal. And it's got two sections of double-sided tape, both with red on them, so it's easy to see where they have to go on. This goes on the back side of the flare. It attaches in 2 points. One to secure to the flare, and the second area secures to the actual body of the Jeep. They give you an alcohol pad to go ahead and prep that area. And then you're just going to go ahead and press fit this on and then cut it to length when you get it there. So what you're going to do is once you have it lined up, you can see I've already pulled some of this out. You're going to pull it as you have it go down the length of the flare, and then kind of just put in and lock it into place with the adhesive. Right now, getting ready to put the flare up onto the Jeep, and we'll be securing it with the screws. There's really no exact science to this. It's kind of a adjust, move, adjust kind of thing, so it can take a little bit of time depending on how everything goes together. Sometimes it's a little smoother, done some test fits, sometimes it's a little rougher. Just going to have to work it. Try doing it both from the front and the rear. Doesn't seem to be a preferred way. You just got to make sure that the lip is in here underneath this back side. Just kind of push everything up. Alright, we're on. The liner is good. We got our wires hanging down so we can attach our marker light connections. Now it's just a matter of going ahead and attaching some screws, and we'll peel back the tape, adhesive tape, which will put it up tighter against the Jeep. So almost done with this side. So one of the things that I'm finding you need to do with this is the clips inside here get a little bit moved when you put the fender over them. So you have to take the awl, insert it, and then kind of push the clip forward or remove some of the material on the underside of the flare. And then you'll be able to get the screws in much easier. That is the install of the front. Hopefully it gave you a better idea of what's involved in putting it on. Overall, it's not a complex process, but it is involved. There's a lot of steps, a lot of things you're going to have to take off, put back on, test, fit, adjust, go like that. But overall, I think it looks good. Definitely gives a lot more room between the flare and the tire. These are 315, so you can see you got plenty of room to run a larger tire if you want. Probably would need to make some adjustments to a new front bumper if you wanted to go much bigger than, say, a 37. if you have the proper running gear for that. But overall, like the look, definitely creates a much better contrast in the Jeep than the white fender that was on here. So up next, got the rear going on. Guess we'll get started on that. So a little bit of delay in actually being able to start the rear fenders. Had some things come up yesterday. Couldn't quite jump onto these as soon as we hoped to yesterday. So new day, new project. The back, very similar to the front. We're going to unbutton a bunch of the stuff underneath, the caps, the plugs, whatever you have it. Pull the old fender off, mark the flare inside, and then cut it, and then put the new flare on, and go from there. So we're going to get started on that. Alright, there we go. Just like on the front flares, we'll need to go ahead and remove these rivets. There's 6 locations, and then just drill them out like we did on the front. One thing I wanted to point out on the rear flare was there's a hole here and a hole here that are mounting points, and when you put this in place you want to definitely make sure that you cut on this side of the flare when it's up here, as it's placed up in here. Those are 2 points that you're going to have to hold the flare in place, both here and here. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're doing your mark. Make sure you go to the outside. This one doesn't matter so much, but definitely over here as well. Was able to get the flare cut. The other thing you want to do, those 2 particular areas I told you wanted to make sure you didn't cut out, those tabs. You need to go ahead and, you can see we went ahead and removed a lot of material that was hanging over here. You want to make these as flat or flush as possible to the hole, and did that for both of them. And then we'll need to drill another hole down here and enlarge in the holes a little bit. And then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. Right now I've got the rest of the support structure on. Use a combination of bolts, then the push style pins. Just kind of push in, so. And same with these, you want to make sure that the top edge is up above the style line. And then we'll go ahead and test fit the fender, and we'll go ahead and then we'll put the liner in and go ahead and get the fender completely installed on here. So right now, again, we've got the support structure in. Just put the shield in right now. It just goes in with the push pins, multiple locations on that. And we're going to go ahead and do a test fit of the flare to see how everything goes. And just like on the front flares, we put the seal edge on here as well with the red tape kind of pull off. It's a couple months since we've installed the fender flares. The weather's changed a little bit. We've had a chance to use them on the highway. We've gotten off-road with them, and overall really like them. They provide adequate coverage to the tires. These tires with our back spacing do stick out a little bit further than the flare, so we do get a little bit of road spray up on the side of the Jeep. If we're in some deep mud, we also get a little bit of side splash on the Jeep, but nothing horribly covering up where you can't see out of the windows or anything like that. As far as how they do when they hit something, that's always a concern we had because they're plastic, right? And they did pretty good. We actually unintentionally, coming out of a designated creek crossing, went into the side of the hill we were coming up and kind of bumped both the front and rear fender off the Jeep. No other damage to it. Certainly you could say if they'd been metal fenders there wouldn't have been anything, or there could have been some damage. You don't really know. But it was a simple process of just putting them back in place. We just got to go ahead and get some additional screws. We'll re-screw them and they'll be good. So that's a positive there with them. So hopefully that gives you guys a better idea of how they're installed, how much we've liked them since we've had them over the last couple months. So there you go. Thanks, and talk to you next time.